Today I'm going to be going through lesson 11 on while loops. So I'm going to click on my note-taking screen and we'll go from there. Okay, so while loops, lesson 11. So you are already familiar with what a loop does. A loop repeats code. Whenever we have a repeated action, we like to use a loop. And up to this point, you've used for loops. Well, a while loop is basically the same thing as the for loop, except the initialization and increment decrement happen in a different spot. So I'm going to take a minute to review, and I'm going to write out a for loop, and then in a minute we're going to go to code.org and we're going to rewrite this loop as a while loop. So I'm going to make a loop, a for loop, and all the for loop is going to do is count from starting from 0, and we're going to count until the count value is less than 5. So if you recall, we had an initialization step, count A. I'm going to call it count A equal to 0. So this is what I was talking about, initialization. And then we're going to have a Boolean condition, and we're going to say count A is less than 5. And count A is just a variable I'm making up. And every time through the loop, we're going to increment count A. So remember, the shortcut was count plus plus, or you could say count equals count plus 1. Either way is fine. But this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the increment or decrement. It's a way for us to increase or decrease the loop counting variable. Okay, so when we have a loop, we always use the curly brackets. And all I really want to do in this loop is print the value of count. I know every time I go through it, it's going to increment by 1. So I'm just going to do a console.log statement. I'm going to say count A equals, and I'm going to concatenate that with count A. Forgot the A up there. So the first time through the loop, count A is 0, 0 is less than 5, I go inside. So I'm going to print the current value of count A, so the output's going to say count A equals 0. Count A gets incremented to 1. I go back up, is 1 less than 5? It is, so then I'm going to print count A is sorry about that. So 1 is less than 5, I go inside, and I'm going to print again, count A equals 1, and then I loop back up, I increment count A goes to 2, is 2 less than 5? It is, I go inside, and so forth. So when we're all done, the output's going to look something like this. And as a reminder, count A will increment to 5, but when I go back up to check this, is 5 less than 5? This is false, so then I skip around with the rest of the code. So that's a for loop. So again, initialization, a Boolean condition, and an increment decrement. Now let's talk about the while loop. So the while loop is, like I said, basically the same. I would like to show this to you in flowchart form. So a flowchart, you may have used these in other classes. It's a visual way to represent a part of a program. So we're going to look at this visually first. So I'm going to draw an arrow, and then I'm going to create a box. And we're going to say initialize, increment, variable. So in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to say var count, we're going to use count instead of count A. We're going to say var count equals 0. And then we're going to go into a decision point, and we're going to say while count is less than 5, and one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to be false. Well, I'll go down the other branch. If it's false, we're going to come here and skip around the while loop. But if it's true, I'm going to go inside the while loop, and I'm going to execute the while loop, and two things are going to happen. So for us, we're going to do console.log count equals concatenated with count. And then the other thing I need to do is I need to increment count. So we have to do this, what I would say, manually inside of the while loop. And then when I'm done, I'm going to go back up and I'm going to check the condition again. While the count is less than 5, I'll go inside, I'll print count and then increment count, and then I go back up. So again, you see this looping process, characteristic of all loops. Now, once count reaches 5, this program will, like this is showing, continue on. So I'm going to now head over to code.org, and we're going to start coding some of this up. And I'll try to talk loud so that you can all hear what I'm doing. And I'm probably going to have to stop at some point and restart the video. All right, so here we go. So if you want to follow along coding, you can, or you can just watch. It's up to you. So here you can see what I did in the notes. Here's our for loop. We're actually going to do two for loop examples, but here's the first one that I did in the notes. For var count equals A, count A less than 5, count A plus plus, I go inside and I print the value of count A. Now you'll also notice that at the end, I also printed the final value of count A, because like we discussed, count A is going to have to go to 5. 5 less than 5, it's false. We continue on with our program. So let's go ahead and run this program, and you can see the values of count A printing. And then after it prints 4, count A equal 4, it increments to 5. 5 is less than 5, so I skip around and then I'm executing this final value statement. So now we're going to do the same project using a while loop. All right, so this time outside of the loop, we have to code up. We have to do the initialization. So we're going to say for count equals 0. Our count equals 0. And now we're going to have our while loop statement, which contains our Boolean condition. We're going to say while count is less than 5. And then we're going to give ourselves a curly bracket. And we're going to do console.log. And actually, I'm going to steal the statement above so I don't have to do so much typing. But I noticed that this is the wrong variable, so I have to change the count A to count. So now I will be able to print these values, but recall from the notes, the other thing I have to do inside of the while loop is increment the value of count. So now, when I run this program, I should see the same exact output. I'm going to steal one more thing. I'm going to steal this other console log statement so that after the while loop, once the condition has failed, we'll be able to print the final value of count, which will, once again, be 5, like it was the other time. So I'm going to hit a reset, and I'm going to hit a run. So this top portion is from the for loop. The bottom portion is from us taking the for loop and rewriting it as a while loop. Now I'm going to stop this video, and then in a minute I'm going to do another example.